Hey guys, it's Miss Waters. Welcome to the flipped lesson on fraction basics. Some of this should be really easy for you to understand because you should have covered it already in elementary school. But before we start on our unit with fraction operations, we're going to do a little recap. So first, we're going to start off with how can we simplify fractions? Using your notes to copy down the key words, follow along with me throughout this lesson. A fraction is in its simplest form when the fraction has no common factors that can be divided into both the numerator and the denominator. To simplify a fraction, divide both the numerator and the denominator by their GCF. Do you guys remember what that is from the last unit? Yeah, you do. It's the greatest common factor. Note that a fraction is in its simplest form if the GCF is 1. Following along with the example on your paper, we're given 2 over 6 as a fraction. We can actually use the ladder method to find our simplest form of the fraction since we're just using GCF. So drawing your ladder, we put 2 and 6 in the ladder. Now, using our good old GCF process, we can take out 2 and we'll get 1 and 3. Do 1 and 3 have anything in common? No. So we're done. So instead of circling the left, because we just have GCF, we're going to draw a line right through the fraction. And that actually gives us our final answer. It's 1/3 in simplest form. Isn't that so cool? Following along with the second example, we're given 4 over 9. So using our ladder, we're going to draw 4 and 9 in the box. But wait, the factors of 4 are 1, 2, and 4, and the factors of 9 are 1, 3, and 9. So they don't really have anything in common, so actually the greatest common factor is just 1, so that actually means 4/9 is already in its simplest form. So our final answer would be 4/9. Now we're going on to the next part of our notes. How can we find equivalent fractions? We can find equivalent fractions using the least common denominator. The least common denominator of a fraction is the least common multiple, or LCM, of 2 or more fractions. LCM should look familiar to all of us because we just had a unit on it. Equivalent fractions are fractions that do not have the same numerators or denominators, but have the same value. Using your paper, we're going to follow along with the examples. So, given 12 over 24, we're going to use our knowledge of least common multiples to find up to 2 equivalent expressions to the examples in the boxes. So, here we can still use the ladder method. So, we'll write our numerator and our denominator inside the box. So, we can take out a lot of numbers here, but let's start off with 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 24 divided by 2 is 12. Awesome. We could take out 6 and we'll get 1 and 2. And we'll put our slashes. So, using the ladder method, we actually found 2 equivalent expressions. And those expressions are 6 over 12 and 1/2. If you actually plug those into a calculator, you would see that we would always get 0.5. So we're going to work through the next example. We're given 10 over 40. So writing our numerator and our denominator in the boxes, we can take out 10, we can take out 5, we can take out 2. If you want to write on your paper and go another way, you totally can. You'll find a bunch of equivalent expressions. I'm going to take out 2. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. 40 divided by 2 is 20. Using this route, the only one we can take out is 5, because 5 is a prime number, and the only factors are 5 or 1 and 5. So we'll do 5, and we get 1 and 4. Drawing our slashes, the equivalent expressions we get are 5 over 20 and 1 over 4. Plugging that into a calculator, you would see that we would always get the value of 0.25. There are 4 main types of fractions that you talk about in middle school. The first kind is a unit fraction. A unit fraction is where the numerator is 1. One example is 1/5. The second kind of fraction is a proper fraction. The numerator is less than the denominator. This is your standard fraction. You've seen many of them. There's an infinite amount of proper fractions. An example would be 2/3. Another kind of fraction is mixed numbers. Now, I know it's called mixed numbers, but they're still a fraction. Mixed numbers are composed of a whole number and a fraction. One example would be 5 3/4. The last kind of fraction that we focus on in 6th grade is an improper fraction, in which the numerator is greater than or equal to the denominator. One popular example is 11/8. When we work with fractions, we like to put them or express them in different ways. So now we're going to talk about conversions. Following along with your notes, we're going to talk about the steps on how we write mixed numbers as improper fractions. First, you multiply the whole number by the denominator, then you add that number to the numerator, and then you have your improper fraction. Follow along in the next example. Following along on your paper, we're given the example 5 4/5. Now, following our steps on the left-hand side, we need to multiply the whole number by the denominator. So we're going to take our whole number and our denominator. It might help to circle them so you know what you're multiplying. Well, 5 times 5 gives us 25. Now what do we do with that 25? Well, we're going to add that 25 to the numerator. So that gives us 25 plus 4. Notice how we're still keeping this over the denominator. Now, 25 plus 4 gives us 29. 29 over 5. That is the mixed number as an improper fraction. We always keep it over the original denominator. On your paper, try this by yourself, 6 1/2. Tomorrow, we'll talk about it in class. We just talked about going from a mixed number to an improper fraction. Now we want to go from an improper fraction to a mixed number. So our steps are to divide the numerator by the denominator, write down the whole number to the left, keeping the same denominator on the right, and take the remainder that you get left over to go above the denominator into the fraction. Following along with the example on your paper, we want to take our last example and change it back into a mixed number. So, given 29 divided by 5, let's go ahead and draw our division box. 29 on the inside and 5 on the outside. Let me redraw that. There we go. So we know that 5 times 5 gives us 25, but 5 times 6 gives us 30. So we're just going to say that 5 goes into 29 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. Subtracting, we get 4. Well, 5 doesn't go into 4, so our remainder is 4. So we've just completed the first step. Now, we're going to write down the whole number to the left, keeping the same number on the right. That gives us 5, and then we have an empty numerator right now, and then we're still keeping the same denominator. Now, remember, don't forget about that remainder, so the 4 goes above the denominator into the fraction, which is giving us 5 over 4/5. I hope you enjoyed this quick flipped lesson video on fraction basics. Remember, you can restart the video, go back to a part you weren't sure of, or pause and watch again. Now, when you're done watching, email me at awaters2@wcpss.net with something you're excited for this fall. I want to make sure that you watch the video in its entirety. Thanks, and I'll see you tomorrow.